Hello everyone, my name is Alyssa. I am a 40-year-old former pharmacist and current housewife, reflecting on the winding paths my life has taken. As I stand here by the window, watching the last of the sun's golden light fade into twilight, I think about my parents, both brilliant doctors, and the profound influence they've had on me. My story begins in a moment of deep reflection, just after the heartbreaking loss of my dear father, Harry. From a young age, I was surrounded by the compassionate echoes of medical conversations, the constant urgency and profound outcomes of a life dedicated to healing others. Unlike my parents, I ventured into the world of pharmaceuticals. It wasn't an act of rebellion, but rather a compromise, a way to stay connected to the medical world without walking directly in their formidable shadows. Growing up in such a home, the values of dedication, hard work, and empathy were deeply ingrained in me. These values guided me as I made my way through college and into my career, shaping my decisions and my interactions with the world. But as life often does, it presented its share of unexpected turns. My journey took a significant detour when I met Oscar at a company-sponsored charity event. He was different from anyone I had ever met, charismatic, supportive, and seemingly understanding of the pressures of my professional world. Our friendship quickly deepened into something more serious, and it wasn't long before we were talking about a future together. As I share these memories, I can't help but reflect on the simplicity of those early days, filled with promise and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the complexities that would unfold in the years to come. I'd like to take you back to the moment I met Oscar, a pivotal turn in my journey. We were introduced by a mutual friend during a charity ball organized by my pharmaceutical company, an event marked by elegance and a shared commitment to making a difference. Oscar was immediately charming, his wit sharp and his demeanor confident, yet there was a warmth about him that seemed to light up the room. As we danced that evening under the soft glow of the chandeliers, Oscar shared stories of his life, his ambitions, and his views on the world. He wasn't in medicine or pharmaceuticals like I was. He worked in finance, worlds apart from the life-saving stakes I was accustomed to, but intriguing in its own right. His passion for his career was evident, and it was refreshing to meet someone who was equally dedicated to their profession, but in a completely different arena. Our connection deepened quickly, and within months, we were inseparable. Oscar proposed on a chilly evening in December, just a year after our first meeting. It was a beautiful, intimate moment that felt like the beginning of a fairy tale. The promise of forever seemed within reach, and I was elated. I envisioned a life filled with love, support, and mutual respect, the foundations upon which I believed our marriage would be built. However, the first challenge arose even before we walked down the aisle. Oscar's mother, Eileen, was a formidable woman with opulent tastes and an eye for the superficial aspects of life. She initially viewed me with a critical eye, judging me more by my financial portfolio than by my character. Her approval, which seemed so crucial to Oscar, hinged on the benefits that our union could bring. Despite these red flags, I was in love, and love, as they say, can often blind you to the realities lurking beneath the surface. I reasoned that any initial disapproval would fade once Eileen saw the sincerity and depth of our relationship. With Oscar by my side, reassuring me at every doubtful turn, I chose to focus on the positives, on the love we shared, and on the future we were about to build together. In my heart, I held on to the hope that love would indeed conquer all, that the challenges we faced were merely hurdles on the path to a happy, enduring marriage. Little did I know, these were just the early signs of the trials that lay ahead, testing the strength of our bond and my own resolve. As I reflect on those days now, I realize how much I had yet to learn about the complexities of love and family dynamics, lessons that would shape the course of my life in ways I never expected. Our wedding was a beautiful affair, a day filled with joy and celebration. As I walked down the aisle, looking into Oscar's eyes, I felt a surge of hope for our future together. However, the initial bliss of married life soon gave way to the reality of day-to-day challenges that neither of us had fully anticipated. As we settled into our new life, I quickly realized that Oscar's capabilities and interest in managing household responsibilities were far less than what he had portrayed. Despite his many promises during our courtship, his participation in our domestic life was minimal, and his attempts were often half-hearted. I found myself taking on the bulk of the chores, in addition to my demanding job. Whenever I tried to encourage him to share more of the home duties, he would either put them off until the last minute or do them so poorly that I felt compelled to redo them. This growing disparity in our expectations of each other began to create a rift between us. The frustration that built up was exacerbated by the frequent interventions of Oscar's mother, Eileen. She had a way of inserting herself into our lives, often criticizing how I managed our home, or how I should be more supportive of Oscar's needs, regardless of my own. Her remarks, which Oscar never contested, started to paint a clear picture of where his loyalties lay. Eileen's criticisms extended beyond our household dynamics. She had a habit of subtly demeaning my family background and my career choices. Her constant comparison of my achievements with those of her acquaintances in more traditionally prestigious professions was both hurtful and infuriating. To make matters worse, Eileen frequently asked us for substantial sums of money to maintain her lavish lifestyle, under the guise of needing help with some crisis or another. Each time I brought up these issues with Oscar, hoping for support or at least a discussion about boundaries, he sided with his mother. His standard response was that I was misinterpreting her intentions, or that I needed to be more understanding of his mother's situation. This pattern of dismissiveness began to erode the trust and respect I had for him. The strain on our marriage reached a peak when my father fell ill. My father, Harry, had always been a pillar of strength and wisdom. When he shared the news of his terminal cancer, it felt as if the ground beneath me had shifted. Every moment spent with him became precious, a bittersweet countdown that I wished I could stop. Despite his weakening state, he continued to share stories and lessons from his life, each one a treasure that I clung to amidst the growing storms at home. Amid these emotional times, my relationship with Oscar reached a tipping point. His lack of empathy and support during my father's illness illuminated the stark reality of our partnership. It was during one particularly difficult night, when I returned home exhausted from the hospital, that I found Oscar and his mother discussing their future financial plans that assumed my father's wealth would somehow support them too. Their conversation, carelessly held in the open, was a chilling revelation of their expectations and entitlements. Finally, my father passed away. He could not win from cancer and left this world. After my father passed away, the grief was overwhelming, but so was the clarity it brought. Among his documents, I discovered that he had left me a significant inheritance, a final act of love and trust amounting to $10 million. This inheritance was meant to secure my future, but when Oscar and his mother learned of it, their true colors became unmistakably clear. They had already started making plans to use this money, assuming it would be theirs to command. Their entitlement was the final straw. I was faced with not just the loss of my father, but the betrayal of my husband and the intrusion of his mother in the most private aspects of my grief and legacy. This realization was painful yet clarifying. It propelled me toward decisions I had postponed for too long, driven by the necessity to reclaim my life and honor my father's memory in a way that was true to his teachings and the integrity he lived by. As the executor of my father's estate, I took immediate steps to secure the inheritance, ensuring that all legal protections were in place. The confrontation that ensued with Oscar and his mother was inevitable. I was no longer the compromising wife, but a woman driven by the need to defend her father's legacy and her own future. This moment marked a turning point, where the sorrow of loss intertwined with the resolve to no longer accept disrespect and manipulation. My father's passing, while a deep loss, gave me the strength to confront the toxic elements of my life, setting the stage for a much-needed change. As the echoes of my father's legacy began to resonate within me, I faced the stark reality of my marriage and the manipulative dynamics that had rooted themselves deeply into my life with Oscar and his mother. The inheritance was not just a financial boon, it became a catalyst for a long overdue reckoning. The day of the confrontation remains clear in my memory. It was a crisp autumn morning, and the air in our home was tense, charged with unspoken truths and impending upheaval. Oscar and his mother had casually mentioned plans for the inheritance money over breakfast, discussing lavish expenditures and investments as if I weren't even there. Their brazen entitlement and the dismissive way they treated me in my own home ignited a fire within me, a fire fueled by grief, betrayal, and years of accumulated disrespect. I remember standing up from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor, drawing a startled look from both of them. My voice was calm but firm as I declared that I could no longer tolerate this disrespect or live in a facade of a marriage that had been unbalanced and unfair from the start. The shock on their faces was almost satisfying, a stark contrast to the usual disregard they showed towards my feelings. I informed them that I had taken legal steps to protect my inheritance, as it was my right and my father's wish that this legacy be mine alone. The notion that they had no claim over it seemed to finally strike a chord, piercing the bubble of entitlement they had been living in. I also presented them with a divorce petition, a tangible symbol of my resolve to reclaim my life and dignity. The ensuing argument was intense. Accusations flew, harsh words were exchanged, and the true nature of our relationships was laid bare. Oscar and his mother tried to manipulate the narrative, painting themselves as victims, but I stood my ground, backed by the law and my unwavering decision to no longer be a part of their deceitful games. Once the storm of that confrontation had passed, I took immediate action. I changed the locks on the doors, ensuring that any further attempts at manipulation would be kept literally and metaphorically outside my sanctum. This act of locking the door was symbolic. It was not just a barrier for them, but a gateway to my new beginning. The divorce process, though emotionally draining, proceeded smoother than expected. Oscar's true character continued to show through his actions and demands, but with each legal victory, I felt a piece of my old self return. The independence and peace that I had longed for were finally within reach, and with every step I took, I felt more empowered and more like the woman my father had always encouraged me to be. With the divorce finalized and my inheritance securely in my name, I took the first steps into my new life. The world seemed different now, filled with possibilities that were once overshadowed by the turmoil of my marriage. I decided to use part of my inheritance to fulfill some long-held dreams that had been set aside. Travel was at the top of my list, a chance to see the world through new eyes, not as an escape, but as an exploration of what life could offer when unshackled from others' expectations and demands. I also revisited my passion for pharmacy, not to return to my previous job, but to contribute in a new way. I started a scholarship fund in my father's name for students aspiring to enter the medical field. This initiative was my way of honoring his memory and the values he instilled in me: compassion, dedication, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. As the days turned into weeks and months, I felt my spirit rejuvenate. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, people who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could offer them. My home, once a battleground of familial obligations and marital discontent, became a sanctuary of peace and creativity. I took up painting, a hobby I had always been interested in but never pursued. Each stroke on the canvas was a celebration of freedom, a colorful testament to the new chapters one was painting in my life. The most significant change, however, came from within. The journey through grief, betrayal, and renewal taught me a vital lesson about the importance of self-respect and the courage to make difficult choices. I learned that while we cannot control every aspect of our lives, we can decide how to respond to the challenges we face. I chose to stand up for myself, to reclaim my life, and in doing so, I discovered a strength I never knew I had. Now, as I look forward to what the future holds, I do so with optimism and independence. I am no longer bound by the shadows of the past, but illuminated by the lessons they provided. My father's legacy lives on through the choices I make and the life I lead, a life of integrity, purpose, and enduring hope. As I close this chapter of my narrative, I want to express my gratitude to you for sharing this journey with me. Remember, it's never too late to seek a better tomorrow.